Adam Schiff thought he had Dan Bongino cornered. The congressman smirked as he delivered what was supposed to be the kill shot. "You claim to have evidence, but you never produce it." Big mistake. Bongino slowly opened 3 briefcases stuffed with documents. 16 months of research. Every lie Schiff told. Every TV appearance. Every promise of evidence he never delivered. All organized, all indexed, all ready for the cameras. "You asked about evidence, Congressman," Bongino said calmly. "I have 227 documented lies. Every transcript, every timeline, every receipt." The room went silent. Schiff's smirk disappeared. Democrats started sweating, because they all realized this wasn't a confirmation hearing anymore. This was an execution. And Bongino had brought the evidence Schiff spent 6 years claiming didn't exist. What happened next shocked Washington and went viral worldwide. The clips are insane. The House Intelligence Committee chamber hummed with 300 voices, and the electric anticipation of political theater about to unfold. Dan Bongino sat at the witness table with 3 leather briefcases stacked beside him like ammunition, each one tabbed with colored markers that caught the camera lights. Around him, Democratic staffers clutched folders while typing tweets they'd send the moment Schiff landed his first blow. Cable news crews positioned boom mics over the proceedings. Every producer, knowing the script Trump loyalist, gets eviscerated by legendary congressional inquisitor clips, go viral, narrative secured. Bongino's 16 years of law enforcement had prepared him for this moment in ways these politicians couldn't comprehend. 4 years walking Brooklyn's most dangerous precincts, where reading violence wrong got you killed. 12 years in the Secret Service, protecting presidents from threats measured in milliseconds. The 3 briefcases contained 16 months of work. Every claim Schiff had made about Russian collusion time-stamped and cross-referenced. Every interview promising evidence he never produced. Every FISA warrant abuse. Every lie organized with the precision of a federal prosecution. They're bringing speeches, Bongino thought, watching Democrats shuffle prepared questions. I'm bringing screenshots. The rear door opened with theatrical timing, and Adam Schiff entered with studied casualness, the man who'd spent 6 years as the face of resistance to Trump, who'd promised evidence of collusion so many times that promising evidence had become his brand. He settled into his elevated chair with chess master precision, adjusted his microphone, and let his eyes land on Bongino with barely concealed contempt. The message was clear. "You're out of your depth, podcaster." Democrats sat forward with anticipatory grins. Republicans looked tense, outnumbered. The media positioned for destruction. What none of them knew was that Dan Bongino had spent 16 months waiting for this exact moment to do what no one else had been willing or able to do. Call Adam Schiff a liar to his face. On camera. With receipts. Schiff leaned back in his leather chair and let the pause extend until the room's attention became physical in its weight. He understood theatrical timing, that the space between words mattered as much as the words themselves. "Mr. Bongino." The pause extended, calculated, perfect. Or should I say, radio personality, Bongino, scattered Democratic laughter. "You sit before this committee not because of your qualifications for law enforcement, but because you have proven yourself to be a reliable propagandist for Donald Trump." He adjusted papers he didn't need to look at, playing to cameras that loved his angular face and serious demeanor. "Let's examine your qualifications for FBI Deputy Director. You were a Secret Service agent, fine, but you left in 2011. 14 years ago. Since then, you've been a failed politician who lost 3 elections. a radio host banned from YouTube for spreading COVID misinformation, a podcaster promoting conspiracy theories, an author of books that belong in the fiction section. The Democratic side vibrated with suppressed glee. This was Schiff doing what he did best, turning credentials into character assassination. Let's discuss your greatest hits of misinformation, Schiff continued, voice rising with practiced indignation. You claimed the Russia investigation was a hoax proven false by Mueller. You spread election lies about 2020 that led to the Capitol attack. You questioned mask effectiveness during a pandemic that killed 1 million Americans. You called the FBI irredeemably corrupt, your future employer. He gestured toward Bongino. Your YouTube ban wasn't censorship, it was consequences for lies. Bongino sat motionless, taking methodical notes, his Secret Service training visible in controlled movements. He sipped water once, slowly, showing no emotion. Let's talk about Spygate, Schiff said, producing Bongino's book with theatrical flourish. He held it up for cameras. Spygate, the attempted sabotage of Donald Trump. This conspiracy theory has done immense damage to our intelligence community. You claimed the FBI investigation had no basis, proven false. You promoted the Nunes memo, thoroughly discredited. You undermined faith in our institutions for profit and political gain. He set the book down with exaggerated gentleness. Mr. Bongino, let's be honest. You're not here because you're qualified. You're here because you're loyal. The word dripped acid. Loyal to a man who attempted to overturn an election. Loyal to a movement that attacked this Capitol. Loyal to conspiracy theories over facts. His voice rose toward the crescendo he'd practiced. Trump has placed you second in command of the FBI, an agency you've spent years destroying the credibility of. It's like putting an arsonist in charge of the fire department. Democrats nodded. Republicans shifted uncomfortably. This was the kill shot, the question designed not to elicit information, but to create a sound bite of destruction. Schiff leaned forward, all false civility gone. So, Mr. Bongino, I ask you directly, do you have any evidence, any actual evidence, to support your claims about the Russia investigation? Or are you like your hero, Donald Trump, someone who always claims to have evidence but never produces it? He leaned back with satisfied smile, convinced he'd framed the question so perfectly that any answer would look like deflection. What Schiff didn't see was the way Bongino's mouth curved into something dangerous. 5 seconds of silence filled the room. Bongino set down his pen with deliberate care, the last note he'd need to make. His hands rested flat on the table, relaxed, the way combat-trained people were relaxed, not tense, but ready. Congressman Schiff, Bongino said, voice carrying calm, almost friendly tone. I appreciate the opportunity to address this committee, and I especially appreciate your question about evidence. His right hand moved to the first briefcase's latches, clicks echoing in the silent room. Because you see, I spent 16 years in law enforcement, and the most important lesson I learned. He opened the briefcase with theatrical slowness, revealing stacked documents organized with tabs, highlighted sections visible even from distance. Never make an accusation you can't back up with documentation. Bongino's eyes locked onto Schiff's with unwavering focus. So yes, Congressman, I have evidence. 16 months of research. Every transcript, every timeline, every lie you told, every promise of evidence you never delivered, every American you deceived using classified access they couldn't verify. He placed the first stack of documents on the table with a sound like a gavel hitting wood. The question is, Congressman Schiff, Bongino paused, watching Schiff's smirk falter. Do you? The next 45 minutes unfolded like coordinated attack. Democrats took turns lobbing grenades, each question designed to make Bongino look unqualified, conspiratorial, dangerous. Representative Swalwell leaned into his microphone with earnest concern. Mr. Bongino, you left the Secret Service in 2011. Why was there a problem with your service? The implication hung, maybe he was forced out. Bongino didn't consult notes. I left to run for Senate congressman. Unlike some people on this committee, I've never been compromised by foreign intelligence. The Fang Fang reference landed like a brick through a window, and Swalwell's face went through unnatural colors. But if you'd like to discuss foreign intelligence compromise, I've got an entire section in briefcase number 2. A younger Democrat jumped in with rehearsed outrage. Mr. Bongino, you were banned from YouTube for COVID misinformation. That's accountability for spreading dangerous lies. I questioned mask mandates, Congresswoman, Bongino replied with patience. I questioned outdoor masking. I questioned masking children. I was later proven correct by multiple studies, including from the CDC itself. Should we talk about Dr. Fauci's testimony that 6-foot social distancing had no scientific basis, or the lab leak theory that's now considered most likely? I've got documentation on all of it. The Congresswoman decided she would not like him to continue. Another Democrat tried different angle. You call yourself a journalist, but you're just a partisan hack. Your show is propaganda. I'm a commentator, Congressman, Bongino said with zero concern. I've never claimed otherwise. I give opinion based on facts. Unlike certain members who claim to present evidence while presenting speculation, who use phrases like more than circumstantial when they mean I have nothing. Each response was surgical, not long enough to seem defensive, not aggressive enough to seem unhinged, just factual enough to draw blood while looking reasonable. A Schiff ally tried the Durham angle. The Durham investigation was a partisan hit job. It resulted in almost no prosecutions. It resulted in exposing what happened. Bongino shot back with controlled heat. Not everything illegal is prosecutable, Congressman. Sometimes the statute of limitations runs out. Sometimes proving it legally differs from proving it factually. But we'll get to Durham's findings in detail. His hand rested on briefcase number 2 like a threat. In excruciating detail. After 45 minutes, Democrats started to look less certain this was going according to plan. Republicans sat straighter, sensing something unexpected. The media's narrative, Bongino grilled, started feeling less certain. And then Adam Schiff made his crucial mistake. He'd been watching with growing irritation, seeing his orchestrated destruction look more like a fair fight. After 45 minutes of Democratic attacks that landed but didn't kill Schiff, decided to deliver the finishing blow himself. Mr. Bongino, Schiff interrupted mid-question voice, cutting through with chairman's authority. I notice you keep claiming to have evidence. He emphasized claiming like an accusation. You always claim to have evidence. Every podcast, every TV appearance, every tweet. I have evidence. This is going to blow up. He played to cameras now, not looking at Bongino, but at America. But I've sat through enough of your podcast to know one thing with absolute certainty. He turned to face Bongino directly, and the room went dead silent. You never produce it. 3 words, each its own sentence, designed to destroy credibility. Dan Bongino is a con man who promises revelation but delivers nothing. Democrats nodded solemnly. Media crews zoomed tight on Bongino's face, waiting for reaction. Anger deflection. The chyron, was practically writing itself. What happened next would be analyzed for years. Bongino leaned forward slowly, deliberate movement of someone who'd decided a moment had arrived. His hands planted flat on the table, fingers spread posture before throwing a punch. His face remained eerily calm, but his eyes had the flat calculation that Secret Service agents used when threat assessment went from yellow to red. Congressman Schiff, 3 seconds of pause. Since you've now challenged me twice on evidence. His left hand moved to briefcase number 2 latches, clicking like a gun being cocked. And since you've spent the last hour attacking my credibility, my qualifications, my career, my character, briefcase 3's latches clicked. All 3 cases now open their contents, organized with colored tabs visible to cameras. I think it's time we discuss your record with evidence. Bongino produced a folder 3 inches thick, labeled in black marker, visible across the room, Schiff Lies, 2017 to 2024. More accurately, he looked directly into the C-SPAN camera, past Schiff, speaking to every American watching. Your complete and total lack of evidence for claims you made repeatedly under oath using classified access to deceive the American people. The room's atmosphere changed like air pressure before a storm. Republicans sat forward alert, sensing blood. Democrats exchanged worried glances. Schiff's practiced smirk faltered for 1 second, just enough to show that underneath was a human being who'd just realized he might have miscalculated. Media producers sent urgent texts. Something's happening. Stand by. The script had been torn up, and nobody knew what came next, except the man with 3 briefcases full of receipts. Bongino stood without asking permission, not waiting for approval, just standing with natural authority of someone who'd taken bullets meant for presidents. He lifted a poster board from behind his chair, 4 feet by 3 feet timeline, printed in letters large enough for every camera to capture dates and quotes in red and black, connecting lines like a crime scene investigation. Let me tell you a story. Bongino began, voice casual, like someone explaining something complicated to people who hadn't been paying attention, about a man who had access to America's most sensitive intelligence. He pointed to Schiff without looking at him, who went on television 227 times over 6 years. The number hung like an accusation, claiming he had seen evidence of the most serious political crime in modern history. The poster showed screenshots of CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS. Schiff's face. On every one, always serious, always certain, always promising proof. And who was lying? Every single time. Schiff opened his mouth to object, but Bongino's hand came up, just a gesture that said, I'm not done, and somehow it shut Schiff up, maybe because everyone in that room wanted to hear what came next. March 22nd, 2017. Bongino said, producing a transcript yellow highlighter marking relevant sections. Chuck Todd, meet the press. Let me read you exactly what you said, Congressman. His voice shifted into near-perfect imitation of Schiff's measured tone. I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now that the Trump campaign colluded with Russian officials. He looked up. More than circumstantial. You said that. On national television, using your position as ranking member to give weight to your claim. Bongino flipped to another section. 1 week later, March 29th, Wolf Blitzer asks directly, do you have evidence of collusion? You responded, I don't think that's disputable at this point. He let that sink in. Not disputable, meaning it's a fact. He set the transcript down. Want to know the problem with that statement, Congressman? 2 years later, when your Democratic colleagues interviewed you in a classified setting where you were under oath, They asked directly, "What evidence do you have of Trump-Russia collusion?" Bongino produced declassified Senate testimony. Your answer, page 47, line 19. I don't know that the investigation has reached a conclusion on that. His voice dripped contempt. You don't know. After 2 years of promising evidence, after 227 appearances, when you're under oath, suddenly you don't know. The timeline poster showed the pattern with brutal clarity, each quote getting more definitive, even as no evidence materialized. But it gets better, Bongino continued, warming to his topic. July 18, 2018, you told CNN, quote, "The Russians offered help, the campaign accepted, help the Russians gave help, and the president made full use of that help." He paused. That's not speculation. That's direct accusation of criminal conspiracy. 5 distinct criminal acts. And you said it with authority of someone who'd seen proof. Bongino flipped open briefcase, one pulling documents. Here's the Mueller report, all 448 pages. You know what it concluded. He read directly, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government. He looked up. Did not establish, meaning no evidence, meaning the thing you claimed was not disputable, was not provable, meaning you lied. Now I can hear your defense, Bongino said, preempting objection. You'll say Mueller found contacts. You'll say he documented interference. You'll say Trump obstructed. All true. But that's not what you said, is it? His finger jabbed toward the timeline. You didn't say there were contacts. You said there was collusion. You said Trump conspired. You used classified access to make Americans believe you'd seen proof of treason when you'd seen nothing. The Democratic side had gone quiet, uncomfortable silence of friendly fire hitting close. Bongino pulled another document, the IG report. Let's talk about the Steele dossier, the document that started this whole investigation, the thing you vouched for repeatedly. He read sections FBI determined the primary source was subject of FBI counterintelligence investigation. Christopher Steele showed bias. The dossier contained unverified and false information. The FBI knew this and proceeded anyway. He looked at Schiff. You read the same intelligence. You knew the dossier was garbage. But what did you do? Another transcript appeared. You wrote a memo, the Schiff memo defending FBI's use of the Steele dossier to obtain FISA warrants against Carter Page. You called the Nunes memo misleading and dangerous. You vouched for the dossier's credibility. Bongino's voice rose with genuine anger. Then the IG report proved Nunes was right. The FBI had abused FISA. They had relied on unverified opposition research. They had misled the FISA court. Everything you called conspiracy theory was true. He slammed the IG report on the table firmly enough to make microphones jump. Carter Page, American citizen, Naval Academy graduate, helped the CIA track Russian intelligence, had his life destroyed. Surveilled for years based on a warrant you defended. And when it turned out to be based on lies, when the IG confirmed it was abuse, Bongino leaned forward. Where was your apology to Carter Page congressman? Where was your correction? Where was your primetime CNN appearance saying, I was wrong? The silence had weight now, physical presence. But my personal favorite, Bongino continued, voice shifting colder, is the Hunter Biden laptop. He produced a thick file marked with recent dates. October 19th, 2020. You went on multiple networks and said the laptop story was Russian disinformation. He read from notes. It has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. You organized a letter, 51 intelligence officials, claiming the laptop had classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. Bongino's eyes locked onto Schiff's with laser focus. Problem is, the FBI had the laptop since December 2019. They'd verified it was authentic. They knew it was real. And you, as chairman with access to classified briefings, you knew it was real too. Or you knew there was no evidence it was Russian disinformation. But you went on television anyway and lied to influence an election. He paused. That's the actual interference in American democracy, Congressman, not Russian bots. You, using classified access to spread disinformation that helped elect a president. The laptop was real. Bongino continued building prosecutors' cadence. Hunter Biden's own lawyers admitted it in court. IRS whistleblowers confirmed the investigation was suppressed. The business deals were real. The emails were real. 10% for the big guy was real. Joe Biden meeting with Hunter's associates was real. Everything you called Russian disinformation, real. And you knew it. And you lied anyway. He pulled out his phone, navigated to a video. Let me show you something from 4 days ago. Hunter Biden's legal team in federal court authenticating the laptop's contents. Want to watch? Because I've got it queued up. I've got court transcripts. I've got IRS testimony. I've got the FBI FD123 form. I've got everything you claimed didn't exist. Schiff's face had gone from confident to carefully neutral to something approaching genuine concern. Democratic staffers typed frantically trying to figure out how to spin this. You want more? Bongino asked, reaching for briefcase 3. Because I'm just getting warmed up. We haven't talked about the whistleblower you coached. We haven't discussed your relationship with Lev Parnas. We haven't touched January 6th committee records that mysteriously disappeared. I've got hours of material, Congressman. He straightened, looked at the timeline, then back to Schiff. For 6 years, you lied to the American people. You used your position, your classified access, your credibility to spread disinformation that damaged national security, destroyed reputations, influenced elections, and undermined faith in institutions. And when confronted, you never apologized, never corrected the record, never admitted wrong. You just moved to the next lie. Bongino's voice dropped to something quiet, but more dangerous. You asked me if I had evidence, Congressman. I have 16 months of evidence, thousands of pages, video clips, transcripts, government reports, court documents, all organized, indexed, sourced, ready for public release. He gestured to 3 briefcases. This isn't a podcast episode. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is a federal case, except the defendant is sitting in the chairman's seat. The room had gone from theater to trial, from political sparring, to something that felt like justice happening in real time. So let me ask you a question. Bongino said, voice carrying weight of everyone who'd been called conspiracy theorist for questioning the Russia narrative. Where's your evidence? Where's the proof of collusion you promised 227 times? Where's documentation of Trump-Russia conspiracy? Where's anything that justifies 6 years of accusations, 15 seconds of silence? Schiff, staring at his notes, at his hands, at anything except cameras, or Bongino, or the evidence spread across the table. That's what I thought, Bongino said quietly. You don't have evidence. You never had evidence. You had access, and you had a narrative, and you used one to sell the other. And now you're sitting in judgment of me, questioning my qualifications, calling me conspiracy theorist when you're the one who spent 6 years lying to the country. Let's talk about real victims, Bongino said, not waiting for questions, taking control of the hearing, because momentum had shifted so completely that procedural rules became irrelevant. Because while you were building your career on television, real people's lives were being destroyed. He produced a photograph, Carter Page, in Naval Academy dress whites, young and idealistic. Carter Page, Naval Academy graduate, MBA from NYU. In 2013, helped the FBI and CIA track Russian intelligence operations. They thanked him for his cooperation. He was on our side, Congressman. Bongino's voice hardened. In 2016, because he joined the Trump campaign as volunteer, the FBI decided he was a Russian agent. They used the Steele dossier, the one you vouched for, to obtain a FISA warrant. They renewed it 3 times, each time misleading the court. Carter Page had his phone, tapped his emails, read his life, turned inside out for 4 years, while you went on television saying there was more than circumstantial evidence. He set down the photo, picked up another document. The Inspector General found 17 significant errors in the FISA applications. 17. The FBI lawyer who altered evidence pled guilty to criminal charges. The entire investigation was based on lies. Bongino looked at Schiff. But you defended it. You wrote a memo defending it. Where's your apology to Carter Page? Silence. Schiff made notes he probably wasn't reading. Michael Flynn. Bongino continued producing another photo, 3-star general decorated veteran. 33 years military service. In January 2017, the FBI questioned him about his conversations with the Russian ambassador, conversations that were perfectly legal part of his job as incoming national security advisor. Bongino pulled out FBI documents. The agents who interviewed him said they didn't think he lied. Their supervisor changed their assessment. The DOJ threatened to prosecute Flynn's son unless Flynn pled guilty. He bankrupted himself, defending against charges the FBI's own agents didn't believe should exist. He set the documents down firmly. You went on television and called Flynn a traitor. You implied he'd committed treason. But when the case was reviewed by independent prosecutors, they recommended dismissing all charges. It took a presidential pardon to end Flynn's persecution, and through it all, you were on television making it worse. More photos accumulated. George Papadopoulos, 30 days in federal prison for a process crime manufactured by FBI using informants to entrap him. Roger Stone, arrested in pre-dawn raid with CNN cameras conveniently present, who tipped them off. Congressman Paul Manafort, held in solitary confinement. All paraded as proof of conspiracy, all destroyed by investigations that found no underlying crime. Bongino leaned forward. But the person I really want to talk about is someone whose life you destroyed more completely than any of them. He produced a final photo, young man, early 30s, exhausted but defiant. John Paul MacIsaac, computer repair shop owner in Delaware. Hunter Biden brought him a laptop, never picked it up. MacIsaac saw illegal content, reported it to the FBI like a good citizen. They took the laptop, did nothing. When the story broke, what did you do? The question hung accusingly. You called him a Russian asset. You organized that letter from 51 intelligence officials. You went on every network and destroyed this man's credibility, his business, his reputation. MacIsaac's shop was vandalized. He received death threats. He had to close his business and move across the country. All because he tried to do the right thing, and you used your position to paint him as a traitor. Bongino's voice shook with controlled anger. The laptop was real. The FBI authenticated it. Hunter Biden's lawyers admitted it. But you knew that. You had access to classified briefings. You knew the FBI had verified it. But you lied anyway, because the election was weeks away, and the truth would hurt your candidate. So you destroyed John Paul MacIsaac to protect Joe Biden. He pulled out his phone, played a video of MacIsaac testifying voice-breaking as he described losing everything. When it finished, Bongino turned off his phone with slow deliberation. These are the consequences of your lies, Congressman, not abstract political damage. Real people, real lives, destroyed. And you've never apologized to a single one. Never admitted wrong. Never shown one moment of remorse. He gathered the photos. You called me dangerous. But I've never destroyed an innocent person's life. I've never used government power to persecute citizens. I've never lied under oath using classified access to make my lies credible. Should I continue? Bongino asked, hand resting on briefcase 3. Because I haven't gotten to the whistleblower yet. Schiff found his voice defensive, lacking authority. The whistleblower's complaint was legitimate, Mr. Bongino. The Inspector General deemed it credible. You coached him, Bongino interrupted, voice flat and deadly. Your staff met with the whistleblower before the complaint was filed. You knew what was coming. You prepared the narrative. You coordinated the release. And then you lied about it. He produced transcripts. September 17, 2019, you told MSNBC, "We have not spoken directly with the whistleblower." That was a lie. Your staff had extensive contact. When that came out, you claimed you didn't know. That was also a lie. Bongino flipped through documents with practiced efficiency. You managed the entire first impeachment based on that whistleblower complaint. You built the case. You selected the witnesses. You controlled the narrative. And it was all based on second-hand information from someone you'd coached while lying about your involvement. The Ukraine impeachment, he continued building momentum, was based on a phone call where Trump asked about corruption involving Biden's son. That's not illegal. That's a president doing his job investigating corruption. But you turned it into scandal because it threatened to expose the Hunter Biden deals you were already working to cover up. He pulled out another document. And speaking of Ukraine, let's talk about Lev Parnas. The name landed like a bomb. Soviet-born businessman associated with Giuliani, involved in Ukraine dealings. In 2019, he got indicted. Suddenly, he became a witness against Trump. You promoted him. You gave him credibility. You used his testimony in the impeachment. Bongino leaned back, arms crossed. Problem is, Lev Parnas was photographed with you multiple times. At fundraisers, at political events. You knew him personally. You took his money. But you never disclosed that relationship when you used him as witness against Trump. That's not just improper. That's potential witness tampering. The accusations piled up faster than Schiff could process responses, each one documented, each one delivered with prosecutors' precision. January 6th Committee, Bongino said, moving forward without pause. You destroyed evidence. Videos from that day, hours of security footage that didn't fit your narrative, just disappeared. Witness testimony that complicated the story got buried. Exculpatory evidence vanished. He produced another stack. These are preservation requests from Republican members. Official letters demanding the committee preserve all evidence. You ignored them. You destroyed records anyway. That's obstruction, Congressman. That's exactly what you accused Trump of doing, except this time, you actually did it. The hearing had transformed into something unprecedented, not a confirmation, but a trial, except the roles were reversed, and the evidence kept mounting. You know what connects all of this? Bongino asked, voice dropping to something quieter but more dangerous. Every lie, every cover-up, every destroyed life. You used your position, your classified access, your credibility to deceive the American people for political gain. That's not patriotism. That's corruption. That's exactly the institutional abuse you claim to oppose. He started pacing with controlled energy. You asked about my qualifications. Let me tell you about qualifications. I spent 4 years on New York streets, learning what real police work looks like, where evidence matters and lies get people killed. I spent 12 years in the Secret Service, where intelligence analysis means the difference between a president living or dying, where you don't get to make mistakes. His voice rose with passion. I've protected 2 presidents from opposite parties because in the service, politics don't matter, only competence and courage. I've led details in war zones where threats are real, not manufactured for television. I've investigated white-collar criminals smarter and richer than you'll ever be, and I helped put them in prison because I built cases with evidence, not accusations. Bongino stopped, planted both hands on the table, leaned toward the Schiff. And after I left the service, I built a podcast with millions of listeners, not by lying but by telling truth when everyone else was lying. I got banned from YouTube not for misinformation, but for questioning official narratives that turned out false. I wrote books documenting corruption while you were denying it existed. And when Trump offered me the chance to restore integrity to the FBI, I said yes, not because I'm loyal to him, but because I'm loyal to what law enforcement should be. And the room was dead silent except for Bongino's voice. So yes, Congressman, I'm qualified. More qualified than you were when you became a prosecutor. More qualified than you were when you ran for Congress. More qualified than you are now, sitting in that chair passing judgment on my career, while yours is built on documented lies. He straightened, looked at cameras. The question isn't whether I'm qualified to be FBI Deputy Director. The question is whether you're qualified to remain in Congress. Whether someone who's lied repeatedly, who's destroyed lives, who's weaponized intelligence access, who's corrupted investigations, who's never once apologized or shown remorse, whether that person deserves to hold power over any American. Bongino gathered his documents with deliberate care, organizing them back into briefcases, but leaving several stacks on the table, evidence that wouldn't disappear, documentation for the congressional record receipts available to every American. I have 16 more pages in this folder, he said, tapping the thick file labeled Schiff Lies. 16 pages of lies chronologically organized, each one sourced. Should I read them all? Because I will. I cleared my entire day for this. I've got nowhere to be except right here, presenting the evidence you said I didn't have. The implicit challenge hung, make me stop, and you admit it, you can't refute it. Let me continue, and I'll destroy what's left of your reputation on national television. Schiff sat frozen, calculating options, trying to figure out the exit strategy that preserved some dignity, some credibility, some sense he'd survived without being completely dismantled. Around him, Democratic colleagues suddenly found reasons to check phones, consult with staffers, avoid cameras capturing every reaction. The afternoon had become a massacre, and there were still hours of daylight left. The next 45 minutes became controlled demolition. Bongino, methodically working through remaining evidence, while Schiff sat increasingly isolated, his confident prosecutor persona crumbling into genuine shock. Each revelation hit harder than the last, building a case so comprehensive that even friendly media would struggle to spin it. Let's talk about COVID, Bongino said, pulling out Briefcase 2's most damning section, because this is where your pattern of lying became genuinely dangerous. He produced emails, lab reports, intelligence assessments marked with official seals. January 2020. The Wuhan Institute of Virology became a topic. Was COVID-19 created in that lab, natural origin, or lab leak? Bongino spread documents across the table like cards. The intelligence community was divided. Some analysts thought lab leak was likely. Others preferred natural origin. But here's what matters. There was no consensus, no definitive evidence either way. Analysts said publicly that both scenarios remained plausible. He looked at Schiff. You had access to these same briefings. You knew the evidence was inconclusive. You knew reasonable experts disagreed. He pulled out video clips on his tablet, played them Schiff on CNN, dismissing lab leak as conspiracy theory, on MSNBC calling it debunked, using his intelligence committee credentials to shut down legitimate debate. You didn't just express opinion. You used your position to silence people who turned out right. Scientists got fired. Doctors got banned from social media. Researchers lost funding. All because people like you with classified access declared the debate settled when you knew it wasn't. Bongino's voice rose with genuine anger. 2 years later, the Department of Energy, the agency monitoring biological research, concluded lab leak was most likely. The FBI agreed. Multiple agencies revised assessments. The conspiracy theory became mainstream scientific position. And where was your apology? Where was your admission? You'd shut down legitimate debate based on political convenience. He moved forward without pause. Here's my favorite part. You demanded Americans follow restrictions you ignored. Masks for everyone except when you were caught at a salon without one. Lockdowns for small businesses except for political fundraisers. Social distancing for families except during your campaign events. Documents kept coming, photos of Schiff at maskless events, reports of fundraisers during lockdowns, videos of him demanding restrictions he violated. Each piece another brick in the wall of hypocrisy. But the most dangerous thing you did during COVID was help suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story, Bongino said, circling back. October 2020. The New York Post published evidence of Biden family corruption. What did you do? You organized that letter from 51 intelligence officials claiming it was Russian disinformation. He held up a printout of the letter. You coordinated this. Your staff reached out to these officials. You helped draft the language. You made sure it hit the press at the exact moment to kill the story. And every word was a lie. There was no intelligence suggesting Russian involvement. The FBI had authenticated the laptop. But you needed Biden to win, so you corrupted the entire intelligence community to influence an election. Bongino's voice dropped cold. That's the real election interference. Not Russian Facebook ads, not Trump asking about corruption. You, using former intelligence officials to spread disinformation that changed how Americans voted. That's infinitely worse than anything you accused Trump of doing. The timeline showed it all: the laptop story breaks, immediate pushback from intelligence officials, media blackout, social media suppression, and, at the center, Adam Schiff coordinating the cover-up. Those 51 officials who signed your letter, Bongino continued, they didn't see intelligence suggesting Russian disinformation. They took your word. They trusted that you as chairman wouldn't lie. But you did. You used their credibility to sell your lie. You corrupted them the way you corrupted the institutions you claim to protect. He produced new testimony, IRS whistleblowers who'd investigated Hunter Biden. These agents, career professionals, not political appointees, testified their investigation was shut down. Evidence was suppressed. Prosecutors were blocked from pursuing obvious crimes. Who helped make that happen? Who had power to pressure DOJ? Who had motive to protect Biden? Who organized the intelligence community to discredit the laptop before verification? The accusations weren't speculation. They were documented questions connecting dots with documents, rather than assumptions. "Let's talk about censorship," Bongino said, shifting sections. "You sat on the Intelligence Committee while FBI agents met regularly with social media companies, flagging accounts for suspension pressuring platforms to remove content coordinating censorship campaigns against Americans whose crime was disagreeing with official narratives. Hunter Biden, laptop, censored. Lab leak theory, censored. Vaccine side effects, censored. Election integrity questions, censored." He pulled out FOIA emails, FBI correspondence, with Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, showing government coordination of content suppression. "You knew about this. You had oversight responsibility. You either approved it or looked the other way. Either way, you're responsible for systematic violation of Americans' First Amendment rights." Bongino leaned forward, voice intense. "I got banned from YouTube for questioning mask mandates that the CDC now admits weren't scientifically justified. I lost millions in revenue. My show was demonetized, all because I asked questions that turned out right. And you were part of the system that made that censorship happen, that labeled dissent as misinformation, that turned social media into government censors." Evidence kept mounting. FBI whistleblower testimony emails showing coordination, internal documents proving systematic suppression. Each document entered into congressional record, each piece another nail in Schiff's credibility coffin. "But here's what really bothers me," Bongino said, voice shifting from prosecutor to something more personal, more angry. "You did all this while calling yourself a patriot, while claiming to defend democracy, while wrapping yourself in the flag and Constitution and rule of law. You destroyed lives, corrupted institutions, lied repeatedly, violated Americans' rights, all while claiming moral authority, positioning yourself as defender of truth and justice." He stood, started pacing, controlled energy barely contained. "There's a word for that, Congressman. It's called hypocrisy. Actually, that's too kind. It's fraud. It's corruption. It's the exact abuse of power you accused Trump of committing, except you actually did it for years, and you never faced consequences." Bongino stopped directly in front of Schiff's elevated position, looked up at the chairman, literally looking down on him, except the witness had evidence, and the chairman had nothing but crumbling facade. "You asked if I was qualified to be FBI Deputy Director," Bongino said quietly. "Let me ask you, are you qualified to be a senator? Are you qualified to have classified access you've repeatedly abused? Are you qualified to judge anyone when your own record is this corrupt?" The questions hung unanswered. Schiff opened his mouth, closed. It tried again, couldn't find words. For perhaps the first time in his congressional career, Adam Schiff, legendary interrogator, media-trained performer, always prepared prosecutor, had no response. "I didn't come here to destroy you," Bongino said, voice softening slightly. "I came to tell the truth, to present evidence, to do what law enforcement officers do, build cases with documentation, not accusation. But the truth destroyed you anyway, didn't it? Because you built your career on lies, and when someone finally presented receipts, the whole thing collapsed." He gathered documents, started packing briefcases. "I'm done, Mr. Chairman," Bongino said to the Republican running the hearing. "I've presented my evidence. I've answered questions about my qualifications by demonstrating what qualifications actually look like, not credentials and TV appearances, but competence and courage. and commitment to truth. Whether this committee confirms me or not, I've accomplished what I came to do. He closed the last briefcase with decisive click. I've shown America who Adam Schiff really is. The committee room erupted in chaos. Republicans standing and applauding Democrats, scrambling to exit without facing cameras, media running to file stories that would dominate coverage for days. Schiff sat frozen in his chairman's seat, papers scattered, looking smaller than when the day started, diminished in ways that had nothing to do with physical stature, and everything to do with exposed lies and destroyed credibility. A young Democrat tried to help, leaning over to whisper something, probably suggesting they regroup. Schiff waved him away with gesture both dismissive and desperate, still trying to project authority, even as authority drained from him like water from a broken dam. Bongino walked out of the hearing room with his 3 briefcases past reporters shouting questions he didn't answer, past Democrats who wouldn't make eye contact, past Republicans who wanted to shake his hand, but he kept moving out of the building into cold Washington air, where his security detail waited. He didn't need their validation. He had something better. 16 months of documentation proving he was right. Within 10 minutes of the hearing ending, Bongino Destroys Schiff was trending #1 worldwide. Schiff lied hit #2. Receipts claimed #3. The clips spread across every platform the moment Bongino opened his briefcases, the evidence presentation, Schiff's silence when caught in lies, the final walkout. Conservative media exploded with celebration. But more telling, mainstream media couldn't ignore it. CNN called it contentious hearing. MSNBC referred to heated exchanges. The New York Times ran a headline about accusations fly in FBI confirmation. But the clips told the real story, and Americans weren't stupid. They could watch videos, see documents, hear evidence. This wasn't spinnable. This wasn't dismissible as partisan attacks. This was a former Secret Service agent presenting government documents proving a congressman had lied repeatedly for 6 years. Fox News cleared its primetime lineup. Tucker Carlson played a full hour of hearing highlights, bringing in analysts who walked through every piece of evidence. Even CNN couldn't avoid it. They had to cover the story, though they tried framing it as both sides making accusations. But the video didn't show both sides. It showed one side presenting documented evidence, while the other sat in silence. Conservative podcasters released emergency episodes. Ben Shapiro titled his, "The Schiff Finally Hits the Fan." Megyn Kelly called it, "The greatest congressional confrontation I've ever witnessed." Joe Rogan sent Bongino a text, "Holy shit, dude." Notably, Bongino's own podcast didn't mention it. He recorded his regular episode about FBI reform, never referenced the hearing, never gloated, just did his normal show. It was a class move that even critics had to respect. He'd let the evidence, didn't need to spike the football, understood the moment was bigger than personal victory. For Adam Schiff, the next 72 hours became a nightmare from which there was no waking. His staff fielded calls from donors asking what happened, from media allies unable to defend him from Democratic leadership, suggesting he lay low. The Washington Post ran an opinion piece titled, "The Evidence Problem When Accusations Outrun Facts." The Atlantic published an essay examining how Schiff had become the face of collusion claims that never panned out. His censure resolution, passed by the House months earlier, but largely ignored by friendly media, suddenly became relevant again. Every article about the hearing mentioned it. Every profile included it. The context had shifted. He wasn't a truth-teller being persecuted by Republicans. He was a liar who'd finally been exposed. Democratic senators quietly met to discuss whether Schiff should remain on the Intelligence Committee. No one wanted to force a public fight, but private conversations happened. Adam, maybe focus on other committees for now. Let this blow over. The problem was, it wouldn't blow over. The clips had permanent shelf life. 227 times you lied was being shared by millions. Where's your apology to Carter Page had become a meme. The image of Schiff, sitting in silent response, that 15 seconds of dead air played on loop across social media. Political opponents started calling him Schiff the Liar in casual conversation. Not as insult, just as descriptor, the nickname that sticks because it captures something people already believed. Conservative organizations filed FOIA requests for every document related to Schiff's classified access, his contacts with intelligence officials, his role coordinating the Hunter Biden laptop response. Congressional Republicans announced investigations. Criminal referrals were mentioned. Though everyone knew prosecution was unlikely, but the threat hung there anyway. Reminder that actions have consequences. 1 week after the hearing, Dan Bongino walked into FBI headquarters for his first day as deputy director. The Hoover building felt different than during his Secret Service days, more bureaucratic, less operational, the accumulated weight of institutional politics. But something else was different, the way agents looked at him, not with hostility or skepticism, but with something approaching hope. A young agent, maybe 28, fresh-faced and earnest, approached in the elevator. "Sir, I just wanted to say, that hearing, we all watched it. Every agent in this building. Thank you for defending the Bureau. The real Bureau. Not what it became." Bongino studied the young agent, saw sincerity, idealism, belief that law enforcement could be something noble if only the politics could be stripped away. "What's your name, Agent?" "Martinez, sir. Counterintelligence Division." "Agent Martinez, I didn't do it for the Bureau," Bongino said quietly. "I did it for the truth. But if you want to restore what the Bureau should be, you do it one case at a time. One honest investigation at a time. You don't cut corners. You don't play politics. You follow evidence wherever it leads, and you don't care who it embarrasses." The elevator doors opened. Martinez nodded, started to step out, then turned back. "That's what we want to do, sir, if you can help us." Bongino watched the young agent walk away, felt the weight of what he'd taken on. Reforming the FBI wasn't about one hearing or one confrontation. It was about changing culture, rebuilding trust, proving through actions that institutions could work the way they were supposed to. But first, they'd needed someone willing to stand up and call out the lies, someone willing to bring receipts, someone willing to face down powerful people and tell them they were wrong publicly with evidence. That part was done. The hearing had accomplished that much. Now came the harder work, actually fixing what had been broken. Adam Schiff spent 6 years building a reputation as the ultimate guardian against Trump. The man with the evidence, the intelligence expert who knew the truth no one else could see. He became the face of resistance, the prosecutor who would bring down the corrupt president, the steady hand defending democracy from authoritarian threat. But when confronted by someone who actually had evidence, someone who actually did the homework, someone who brought receipts instead of rhetoric, that reputation evaporated in 90 minutes. Because you can lie on CNN, you can lie on MSNBC, you can lie in classified hearings where Americans can't verify your claims, you can build a career on accusations unsupported by proof on implications more powerful than facts on institutional credibility that substitutes for documentation. But eventually, you run into someone who's been keeping score, someone who saved every transcript, someone who documented every lead. Someone who was willing to stand up and say, "I have the receipts. Do you?" Dan Bongino didn't just defend himself that day. He vindicated everyone who questioned the Russia collusion narrative, everyone who said the Hunter Biden laptop was real, everyone who knew the intelligence community had been weaponized, everyone who'd been called conspiracy theorist for believing things that turned out true. He proved that truth still matters, evidence still matters, and lies, no matter how often repeated, no matter how credentialed the liar, no matter how many TV appearances support the narrative, eventually face a reckoning. Schiff had lied with impunity for years. 227 TV appearances, countless headlines, a censure that his media allies helped him ignore. He'd destroyed careers, corrupted institutions, and misled millions while claiming moral authority and classified knowledge. But one hearing, one prepared opponent, one afternoon of documented facts, and the lies could no longer hide. That's the power of receipts. That's the vindication of truth. That's what happens when conspiracy theories turn out to be conspiracy facts, when the scoreboard finally gets posted, when someone actually compiles the evidence and presents it publicly. Somewhere in America, Carter Page watched that hearing. Michael Flynn watched. John Paul McIsaac watched. Every whistleblower dismissed as partisan, every doctor banned for questioning COVID policies, every parent called a terrorist for questioning school boards, every American labeled conspiracy theorist for doubting official narratives, they all watched. And they smiled. Because finally, someone fought back. With evidence. And won.